Good morning, everyone. It is 8 a.m. We'll have just a minute or two delay here while we get our meeting set to stream live on the Facebook page, and then once that is ready, then we will stand for the pledge and prayer and get our meeting underway. So just bear with us for just a minute until we get that link established. Good morning, everyone. It is 8:03 a.m. I believe we are live streaming at this point. A special thanks to Joel Johnson and IT, as well as Deb Burley, for giving us a test run of that. Hopefully it works well today. We will also have a couple of department heads that will call in to the meeting, or at least will participate in the meeting via GoToMeeting. So bear with us as we embrace a couple of these new ideas on how to get our message out, even in the era of social distancing. And with that, if you would please stand with me for the pledge and remain standing for invocation. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you please bow with me? Father God, our prayers of the last couple of days have been pretty consistent. We ask for your wisdom and direction as we navigate unusual circumstances and constantly changing information. We pray that you would arm us with as good of information as we can have, and with as much clarity of mind as we can have in an ever-changing landscape, that we would make good decisions for our taxpayers, our employees, our citizens, and those that visit Morgan County. We thank you for the incredible blessing it is to call this great community our home, and we take great pride in the opportunity that we have to serve in a leadership capacity. We also pray for the continued safety of the men and women who make up our front lines as we respond to this public health crisis. Our health department, public preparedness coordinator, EMA, EMS, 911, sheriff's department, and all of the other first responders and fire departments and police agencies across Morgan County, please watch over them and keep them safe. Thank you again for this opportunity to serve and to lead in a time when it's needed, and we don't take that responsibility lightly, and we ask for your direction as we execute it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So this is a special meeting of the Morgan County Board of Commissioners. This is the third time that we've met in just a little over a week, and has been consistent with responding to the COVID-19 coronavirus issue in our community. As soon as we think that we may be somewhat ahead of the issue for the day, information changes. I'm proud of this group for taking quick action to adopt additional sick time and limiting restrictions for our employees on using time off that they have available to them so that they don't have to choose between their paycheck and their health as we navigate this unusual time. I'm also proud of this group for taking reasonable action to balance the need that we have to provide government service, but also to limit the potential exposure to our employees. And on Thursday, as you are all aware, we took action to limit access to the buildings, not just this, but our other county properties, to the public. All of that changed at noon yesterday when the governor of Indiana, Governor Eric Holcomb, issued Executive Order 20-08, which is Indiana's iteration or version of a stay-in-place order. The governor has mandated that we only travel for essential business, for essential government functions, and other permitted travel activities. And we are asked to limit all other activities for a period of 2 weeks. Also buried in the executive order that the general public may not be aware of is a mandate that local units of government make a determination of which departments are essential and which departments are non-essential for the purposes of the executive order. Our mandate extends further to then make a list of employees that fit those various descriptions so that it is clearly known by the local unit of government who is to be working and in what capacity during the duration of the executive order. The executive order begins tonight at 11:59 p.m. and is in effect all through the day of April 6th and expires at 11:59 p.m. on April 6th unless otherwise extended by the governor of Indiana. So that is our purpose today, to establish our essential and non-essential functions for the duration of the executive order. And to that end, we have our own local order proposed. I will read into the record a summary of the item before the commissioners and then open up for discussion. Our local order opens up with essentially the preamble that I just went through, that we have a mandate under the governor's executive order to perform this function. It then goes on to a general exemption, which excludes from our actions to limit travel in consistency with the governor's order, a general exemption to all first responders, law enforcement, emergency dispatchers, emergency management personnel, members of the judicial system, including judges and court staff, members of the county council and board of commissioners, and correction personnel, as well as the coroner's office. That's an all-encompassing general exemption. Those functions, it stands to reason at face value that those functions need to continue during the emergency. We then move on to defining essential government functions with limited staffing. This section is particularly important because there are some functions that the governor has deemed as essential in his executive order, where there is some intersection with county offices. One of those is real estate transactions is an essential business service carve out in the governor's executive order. We have departments that intersect with the real estate community, and I'm just giving this as one example. So we do have a number of agencies within Morgan County that need to continue to function, but will be able to do so with a limited staff, perhaps even greatly reduced staff. And we list those in this order as the county assessor, the auditor's office, the recorder, clerk, the board of health, treasurer, highway department, veteran services officer, prosecuting attorney, Title 40, our county maintenance department, information technology, as well as the commissioners. These offices do not need to function at full capacity, but in some way, shape, or form, their services may be needed in a limited fashion over the next 2 weeks. We then go on to list non-essential government functions that will not operate during the next 2 weeks. And those are enumerated as the Plan Commission, the 4-H Extension, Soil and Water Conservation, the Surveyor, Morgan County Substance Abuse Council, the Solid Waste District. Our election office, I think, has been moved to a essential but limited function status, and then our weights and measures in a non-essential operation. I should note that several of these agencies that I just mentioned in the non-essential, first of all, I want to be clear that we are not considering these agencies as unimportant. We are simply noting that these are agencies that do not need to conduct public business over the next 2 weeks. So I want to make that very clear. The second thing I want to make note of is that several of those offices have already made work from home arrangements and are going to continue in some degree or another, but for all other intents and purposes will be shut down over the next 2 weeks. We then move on to a section calling on department heads to exercise discretion. This really goes and points to the essential government functions, but with limited staffing. We need department heads and desire for department heads to make their own decisions at the department level of what services they need to provide over the next 2 weeks and what services they can afford to hit pause on. We also want to leave it to the department heads to make their own determinations on what type of staffing level is necessary to meet that description. We do not want to get into the business of assuming or thinking that we know how to run your department better than you do, because we do not. And so we want that to be done by you, the department head, and by your discretion. And then finally, this ordinance will sunset this order will sunset like our other orders in coincidence with the timing of other steps within this emergency. So because this action is completely based on the governor's executive order, our local order will expire when the governor's executive order expires. If he chooses to extend the executive order on limiting travel, obviously we would not know for what period of time that may be, but should he choose to extend that, this ordinance automatically extends to match the period of time established by the governor of Indiana. So with that, I'll open up the floor to discussions from our board members And once we have some discussion here from the board, I will turn it over to Josh Messmer, who is managing our go-to-meeting setup, and we will allow any of our department heads that want to chime in virtually to do so. And of course, we'll extend that same courtesy to our department heads that are here in the audience today. So at this point, we've read into record the overview of the order, and I turn it over to the floor for discussion from the board.
I have a question to start with. Did you say that the election board had been switched from a non-essential to essential?
The printout, thank you, Norman, for the clarity on that, because the printout I have, I don't think that edit got made, but we do believe that first of all, it should be noted as the election office. The election board is largely appointed by the political parties, but we want to move the election office into essential but limited staff. Are you okay with that?
You know, I felt like it ought to be essential because they got a lot of absentee ballots that they need to be working on getting out.
And that's a good point. And the conversation that was had was that at least for the next couple of weeks, they're not concerned about that due to the primary being moved. However, Norman, if this order would be extended by the governor, we would probably have to make some changes to that because an extension is only going to get them closer and closer to the date of the primary.
And the other comment I got on the weights and measures, I feel like that ought to be moved over to essential also. He goes out and checks gas pumps, scales in stores, and so on and so on. And you know, people still buy gas, so they need to keep those checked on.
Yeah, you raised a really good point there. Obviously, the governor's executive order allows travel to and the consumption of products at all stores that sell groceries and medicine, as well as all convenience stores. So that's an excellent point. What are the thoughts of other members and legal counsel, county administrator, or others? Feel free to chime in.
If he's willing to, I don't have a problem with that. It's putting him more at risk, more exposure. If he's fine with it, I'm fine.
And Norman, it could be a situation where I don't know that the work of that department is of such urgency that it would need a general exemption such as the public safety, but I mean, I think an argument could be made in that, you know, due to the activities that are permissible under the governor's executive order, weights and measures could be an essential function, but with a limited staff. Obviously, in the case of Jeremy Belcher, the staff is limited because it's only him, but perhaps he would use discretion in only doing inspections that were necessary to continue business over the next couple of weeks. What are other thoughts?
I agree that it makes sense to include it probably as essential, particularly to give him, with his discretion, perhaps the ability to respond. I mean, this is a potentially unique situation in which his various actors may take some action if required his oversight, and certainly within his discretion, can decide what's appropriate and not to do.
Norm's point, to give the flexibility isn't a bad thing. I don't think anyone's wanting to be in the office any more than they need to at the current moment. So I don't think we have to worry about any abuse.
We have a consensus to move weights and measures into essential government function with limited staffing, with the strong recommendation to Jeremy that he limit inspections to only those that are very necessary and essential over the next couple of weeks. That'd be okay with you? Okay.
Fine.
So we have a unanimous consensus on that edit. I know it's been Jim Wisco, County Attorney, is there to make edits for us. Thank you, Norman, for that point. That was a great catch. Any other thoughts or discussion on the order? Not hearing any, I'll open the floor to any department heads. I know we've made as good of a faith effort as possible to consult with each of you, given the fact that we've had less than one business day, really even less than half of a business day, to try to make accommodations on the executive order. Are there any members of our leadership team that would like to make any comments? Mark Toomey, Director of Emergency Management. We got a microphone for you to use for the benefit of those tuning in electronically.
It's supposed to fit in there, so I'll hold it. In conversations I had with Commissioner Hale yesterday, we had talked with a vendor that has told us that she can get the N95 particulate respirator mask and the pleated Kimberly-Clark surgical mask, which we need for counties such as EMS, the Health Department, the Sheriff's Department. And I got a price off the internet for this. I haven't heard back from her this morning, which I'll get back with her. I talked to Steve briefly this morning. We can come up with a number, a figure for how many we need. Even though they say that there will be another decision made April the 7th, I feel like we should go ahead and prepare for the next month. From this point forward, it's going to take us about a week to get this equipment in. So I don't have a hard, fast figure for what it's going to cost. We're guessing somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 to get all this in for a month that would last all the first responders. I tend to lean more towards the middle of that, around 25 or so. But I can have a price to come to report back. I just need the authorization to go ahead, get the pricing through her, get with the health department, and to make it order. We already have the numbers from a project we did for the state that we sent in for personal protective equipment there. We feel like that everybody has probably enough gloves. I talked to Troy Whedon yesterday. They have enough gloves to get them through from Oil. And so I'll get the Sheriff's Department and see where they're at. I'd like to go ahead today and get prices from her, find out what the delivery's going to be, and then I can give Josh and let him know where we're at.
Questions or comments from the board? I'm assuming that we would be on the same page in blessing Mark Toomey, EMA Director, to continue to explore that situation.
I'll have something for you later today, Josh.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Other department heads that would like to make comments or feedback or suggestion regarding our essential and non-essential staffing levels. And Josh is informing me that we don't have any takers on GoToMeeting. If that changes in the next minute or so, just let me know. Any further discussion from the board on executive order from the Board of Commissioners would be in response to essential travel. Any further comments or discussion? Not hearing any, I would call for a motion.
Go ahead and make a motion. We pass executive order of the Morgan County Board of County Commissioners regarding the essential government functions.
There's a motion on the floor to approve the order as presented and amended in our meeting here this morning. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any further comments or discussion? All those in favor of adopting the ordinance or the order signify by stating aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0. We have one more item related to the COVID-19 response. This is an order temporarily amending the ability of Morgan County EMS to accrue additional compensatory time. And I want to make clear to the other department heads that are here or weighing in electronically, that the Board of Commissioners remains open to entertaining any and all reasonable proposals that you guys have on executing the duties of your office over the next couple of weeks and through the rest of this particular crisis. Donnie Warren, Director of EMS, has given us a proposal to allow them to store up additional comp time. Right now, we have a general guidance to department heads with the exception of the Sheriff's Office, which has a separate provision under the Department of Labor, to attempt as best as possible to limit comp time to the equivalent of a traditional work week. For most offices, that falls somewhere between 35 and 40 hours. However, for a man or woman working for our EMS service, their typical work week is 72 hours, so they are currently allowed to accrue 72 hours of comp time. Mr. Warren is concerned about the exposure, rightly so, and hopes that additional comp time could potentially keep and encourage employees to be at work as opposed to being off work, of course, unless they're in a situation where they should be quarantined or distanced from the public. That goes without saying. But in a way to encourage attendance and full staffing in hopes that maybe time would be used at a later date, he has asked us to consider temporarily allowing them to accrue up to 240 hours of comp time. Again, consistent with our other actions, this would not last beyond the emergency declarations of the state and federal government. I'll open up the floor for comments or conversation from the board.
My comment, I truly want to thank them. My daughter works on an ambulance as well, and I mean, it's, they are the true front line right now. I know the Sheriff's Department, the fire departments, and the nurses and doctors are all front line the way I see it, but I don't have a bit of problem doing it because, I mean, you're gonna run into, and I think you already have other communities that is doing it already, where they have people that's getting infected, they're quarantined, they're already short staffed. So, I mean, for allowing the other personnel to step up and cover for them while they're getting well or getting the okay that they're not positive, I think it's just critical that we do that. So I'm totally in support of it.
Other comments or feedback?
I do have something to add. So one thing, Jim, thanks for getting this together so quickly last night. One of the points that Donnie made to me, and it isn't clear to me here, and I don't want to put Kathy in a position that payroll time. Donnie asked that after the emergency is over, that time that's accrued would work its way down, and additional comp time would not be able to be accrued until they're below their current threshold. I don't know if we need to amend it as such, or if you guys are comfortable with the language here, but I at least wanted to share what Donnie had presented.
I don't want to put the auditor's office on spot, but do you have any thoughts on that, Dan, with your office administering payroll?
That's something we can administer.
Okay. And I know your office recently put out a note that, you know, we're going to, at least for the purposes of the next payroll, we're going to pay usual and customary wages and make reconciliation at a later date.
Right, for the payroll period that ends this Saturday, which will be for the paycheck next Friday, we will be paying full-time employees their standard hours and standard rate of pay. All departments are required to maintain and create timesheets for this pay period, but not to submit those to the auditor's office until a later date. Then at that later date, we will reconcile the actual time for the pay period against what was paid, and we'll adjust a future pay check.
Excellent. Very good. Make one other comment that we reasonably believe that the overtime that we're going to be impacted by during this response will likely be reimbursable by state or federal government dollars, and we will be tracking overtime and comp time, as well as all of our other expenses related to the COVID-19 response in an attempt to get reimbursement from either the state or federal government. Any other discussion regarding the order on amending the rules for comp time for emergency medical services personnel? Not hearing any other discussion, I would call for a motion.
Go ahead and make a motion, the executive order of the Morgan County Board of County Commissioners regarding compensatory time for EMS personnel.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the order amending our procedure for compensatory time for EMS personnel. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0. Other business that needs to come before the board, I'll turn that over to Mr. Josh Messmer.
Yes, thank you. I do want to say two quick things related to the orders that just passed. This is a question I received a number of times yesterday. In determining your essential personnel, one of the things that departments have talked about doing is switching which employees come in which days. I want to reiterate to Dan's point that everyone will receive a full paycheck. This is essentially in line with the ordinance that was already passed. This is an emergency shutdown, and so you don't need to be worried about one employee getting paid and not another. So I just want to make sure that's clear to everybody. Also, in regards to the essential employees, we will be giving you a form so that the department head can sign off and the employee has a copy. Sometime today, I would like all department heads to email to read a list of your employees so that she can begin getting that form for you all. The last thing, I hate to bring something that's not an emergency, and I would suggest that it is. They are working towards an easement on FEMA-owned land that we have for our EMC. They have gotten behind on this parcel. They're screened, and they happened to send a right of entry agreement yesterday afternoon and pleaded that we would be able to take action on this since we are meeting today. I asked Jim to review the right of entry. He is comfortable with it. This is not the easement agreement. That will come in a normal meeting, but I wanted to at least put this before you to give our EMC and subcontractors the ability to get onto the land and have some good faith to start moving forward.
Discussion from the board.
And Josh, this is for underground lineage or something, I believe?
Yeah, at this point, I believe it is going to be an underground line to service a homeowner that's affected by relocations.
Other questions or discussion? Any comments from legal counsel?
No comment other than, yes, I have reviewed it. It simply allows NDOT and or its agents to access to the property in any sort of easement. They'd have to come back and seek subsequent approval.
Thank you, Jim.
My only other 2 cents on it, this is deed restricted property that does have the FEMA deed restrictions on them, and it does need to go to Homeland Security for their review, just to make sure. But I'm pretty comfortable. Anything being underground, you're fine. Anything you're going to try to build on top of, that's a major problem. So.
Good point. Any other discussion?
I do want to have a point of clarification. Are you wanting the right of entry to go to Homeland Security or the easement at its proper time?
I'm fine with this right now, and I think they would be, but the easement would need to get reviewed and blessed early, like so.
Thank you.
Final call for comments or questions. Not hearing any, entertain a motion.
Go ahead and make a motion that we end up the temporary right for enter the owned property by the Morgan County with the deed restrictions.
We have a motion to approve the temporary right of entry onto government-owned real estate as outlined today in our meeting. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0. Any other business that needs to come before the board? One more call for any comments from the department heads virtually.
Just texted us.
Okay. One more call for any discussion. The floor is completely open. We're all in this together. So any thoughts that our agency leaders have, we would welcome you at this time.
Got nothing here.
Okay. Not hearing anything, I would entertain a motion for adjournment. Motion's made. I'll second the motion. All those in favor of adjourning until a later date signify by stating aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0.